I was working at a ryokan in Kyoto when an American guest tried to tip me $50. I politely explained that we don't accept tips in Japan, but he shoved it into my pocket anyway. He said, "I know you guys play hard to get, but my grandfather always said, a man's worth is measured in greenbacks." He genuinely thought he was teaching me the secret to success. I eventually returned the money by hiding it in his slippers my brother manages. A small apartment complex in Berlin, and had to call the police on a tourist for vacuuming on Sunday. When the officer arrived, the American shouted, "I'm stimulating your economy with my high-voltage suction. You should be thanking me." He was convinced that German quiet laws were actually a secret communist plot to prevent productive housework. He ended up paying a hefty fine for his cleaning spree. It was the loudest dust I've ever heard. My uncle runs a traditional rug shop in Marrakesh, and once hosted a traveler who refused to drink the welcome mint tea. The man pulled out a bottle of lukewarm Gatorade and said, "I only drink electrolytes because tea's just hot leaf juice for people who don't care about performance." He thought my uncle was trying to poison him with hospitality. He spent the entire afternoon lecturing us on hydration while sweating through his tactical vest. My sister is a tour guide in Sofia, and watched an American student have a meltdown because a shopkeeper nodded. In Bulgaria, nodding means no, and shaking your head means yes. The student screamed, "You're nodding yes, so why aren't you giving me the bread?" She claimed the shopkeeper was gaslighting her using ancient Balkan mind games. She eventually walked out, convinced she'd been targeted by a secret society of confused bakers. It was quite a spectacle. My cousin works at a boutique in Paris and saw a tourist enter without saying bonjour to the staff. When my cousin politely corrected him, the man replied, "I don't pay for greetings. I pay for merchandise, and efficiency is the highest form of respect." He believed the French obsession with greetings was a time-wasting ritual designed to lower the national GDP. He left the store wondering why nobody would help him find a medium shirt. Worked the front desk at a corporate office in Seoul and saw a visitor toss his business card across the table like a poker chip. When I explained that cards are a sacred extension of the person, he laughed. He said, "In Texas, we play fast and loose because speed equals money." He was certain that my two-handed respectful grip was just a lack of confidence. He didn't get the contract. My brother manages a guest house in Chiang Mai and had to stop a guest from pointing at a Buddha statue with his feet. The man snapped, "My feet are the foundation of my freedom, and the statue shouldn't be so sensitive." He argued that the American Constitution protected his right to aim his toes wherever he pleased. He genuinely believed that Thai etiquette was a direct violation of his civil liberties. He was asked to leave. My cousin is a librarian in Oslo and watched a tourist try to start a deep conversation with a stranger on a silent bus. When everyone stared in horror, the American yelled, "You guys are suffering from a loneliness epidemic that only my charisma can cure." He thought the Norwegian preference for personal space was a mental health crisis. He spent the rest of the ride talking to himself about the power of networking. I'm a waiter in New Delhi and served a traveler who insisted on eating messy curry with his left hand. When I mentioned the local preference for the right hand, he said, "I'm a lefty. Enforcing me to use my right is a form of handedness oppression." He claimed that ancient Vedic texts were actually mistranslated and that he was the one truly honoring the food. He left a trail of yellow stains everywhere. My uncle drives a taxi in London and picked up a man who tried to cut the line at a taxi rank. When the crowd complained, the man shouted, "First come. First served is the American way, and your lines are just a sign of sheep behavior." He was convinced that British queuing was a monarchist plot to slow down the working class. He ended up walking 5 miles in the pouring rain. I'm a park ranger in Singapore and caught a tourist trying to smuggle chewing gum past the gates. He told me gum is a cognitive enhancer, and by banning it, you're literally lowering the IQ of your entire island. He argued that the fines were actually a government scheme to fund a secret space program. He was shocked when he received a ticket that cost more than his flight. It was an expensive chew. My aunt runs a souvenir shop in Cairo. Watched a tourist try to tip a museum guard with a handful of nickels. When the guard looked confused, the woman said, "These are vintage American coins. and their historical value far exceeds your local paper money. She believed she was doing the man a massive favor by giving him metal scraps. She was very offended when he asked for actual currency to buy his lunch. My brother is a concierge in Zurich and had an American guest arrive 10 minutes late for a private tour. When told the guide had left, the man said, "Time is a social construct, and your clocks are just a way to suppress my creative flow." He argued that being exactly on time was a sign of a small mind. He spent the afternoon arguing with a clock in the lobby. He missed the mountains entirely. I'm a gift shop manager in Beijing and saw a tourist try to buy a clock for his local business partner. I explained that clocks are associated with death, but he insisted. He said, "Time is money, and I'm giving him the gift of productivity." He was certain that my cultural warning was just a sales tactic to make him buy something more expensive. His partner never spoke to him again after the meeting. My cousin is a landlord in Krakow and had a tenant who refused to take his shoes off inside the house. The man claimed, "My boots are an integral part of my personality, and my personality doesn't belong in the hallway." He argued that Polish floors were intentionally designed to be dirty and that he was testing their durability. He eventually lost his security deposit due to the mud-caked carpets. He blamed the architecture. I'm a barista in Rome and had a customer demand a giant cappuccino with extra caramel at 4 in the afternoon. When I explained, "We only drink espresso afternoon," he said, "Milk is a breakfast fluid in your head. But in mine, it's a 24-hour lifestyle choice." He believed that Italian coffee culture was a conspiracy created by the dairy industry to limit consumption. He drank his milk in angry, hot gulps. My brother owns a taco stand in Mexico City, served a tourist who claimed he could handle the Widowmaker salsa. After one bite, the man turned purple and shouted, "You've weaponized your condiments to punish my American palate." He was convinced that the spice level was a personal attack rather than a local standard. He spent an hour rinsing his mouth with a fire extinguisher. He still hasn't regained his sense of taste. My cousin is a server in Madrid and dealt with an American who tried to order dinner at 5 p.m. when told the kitchen opened at 9. The man yelled, "Eating late is a biological disaster, and I'm not going to let your schedule ruin my metabolism." He believed that Spanish dining hours were a secret plan to make everyone gain weight. He ended up eating a sad, prepackaged sandwich from a nearby gas station. I'm a chef in Lisbon. I've had a guest demand salt and pepper before even tasting the signature salt cod. When I mentioned the chef might be offended, he said, "Seasoning is a democratic right, and your kitchen is a culinary dictatorship." He claimed that his palate was more advanced than 3 generations of Portuguese grandmothers. He covered the entire dish in a white mountain of sodium. He then complained it was too salty. My uncle runs a breakfast cafe in Istanbul and served a man who was angry about the variety of olives. The man said, "Breakfast is for pancakes and bacon, not for a Mediterranean garden party." He believed that the Turkish breakfast spread was actually a lunch menu that we were serving early out of laziness. He insisted on ordering a bowl of plain Cheerios that he brought in his own luggage. It was very tragic. I'm a waiter in Mykonos and watched a tourist try to smash his plate after finishing a souvlaki. I told him we don't really do that anymore, but he shouted, "I'm here for the authentic OPA experience, and your safety regulations are killing the vibe." He believed that modern Greek life was a watered-down version of a Hollywood movie. He ended up paying for the broken plate and a very expensive cleaning fee. My sister works at a coffee shop in Hanoi and served a man who tried to send back an iced coffee because it had too much ice. He said, "You're using frozen water to dilute my caffeine equity, and I want a refund for the volume loss." He was convinced that the ice was a scam to save money on beans. He didn't realize that in the tropical heat, the ice is the only thing keeping us alive. My brother is a waiter in Buenos Aires and served a tourist who sent back a medium-rare steak because it was too bloody, the man said. "I want it charred to the point of carbon safety because I don't trust your local cows." He believed that Argentinian grilling techniques were a health hazard disguised as tradition. He eventually ate a piece of meat that resembled a discarded shoe. He said it was finally patriotic. I'm a bartender in Budapest and had to stop an American from clinking his beer glass during a toast. When I explained the historical taboo, He laughed and said, "History is for losers." And my clink is a celebration of the present moment. He was certain that my warning was a ghost story told to scare tourists. He clinked so hard he shattered both glasses. He then tried to sue the bar for fragile glassware. My cousin works at a traditional restaurant in Addis, Ababa, and saw a guest refused to share a communal platter. The man said, "Individualism is the bedrock of my country, and sharing a plate is basically socialism." He insisted on having his portion moved to a separate paper plate he brought himself. He missed the entire point of the meal, which was the social connection. He ate in lonely, hygienic silence. I'm a traffic warden in Amsterdam and had to pull a tourist out of a dedicated bike lane. He shouted, "These red paths are clearly for pedestrians who want to walk in style. Your cyclists are being aggressive." He was convinced that the bicycle bells were a form of auditory harassment. He nearly caused a 10-bike pileup while trying to take a selfie with a tulip. He blamed the lack of signage. My uncle is a jeepney driver in Manila and had an American passenger scream because there were no official bus stops. The man yelled, "Your lack of a fixed schedule is a direct assault on my productivity-based reality." He believed that the jeepney system was a chaotic prank played on foreigners. He eventually jumped out while the vehicle was still moving. He claimed he was liberating himself from the lack of structure. My cousin works at a spa in Lapland and had to ask an American to stop talking in the communal sauna. The man replied, "Silence is for the cemetery, and my networking skills shouldn't be suppressed by your damp wooden walls." He was certain that the Finnish preference for quiet was a sign of collective depression. He spent 20 minutes trying to sell insurance to a group of naked, very annoyed locals. I'm a tour guide in Sydney and heard a tourist call everyone mate with a very aggressive accent. When a local took offense, the man said, "I'm using your native tongue to build a bridge of brotherhood, and you're being linguistically ungrateful." He believed that saying mate every 3 seconds made him an honorary Australian citizen. He was eventually told to be quiet by a very tired group of surfers. My brother is a trekking guide in Cusco and had a client refuse to drink coca tea for altitude sickness. The man said, "I don't do herbal placebos. I'll just breathe harder." Using my superior lung capacity, he was convinced that his high-intensity interval training in Denver made him immune to the Andes. He ended up being carried down the mountain on a donkey while clutching an oxygen tank. The donkey was unimpressed. I'm a security guard at a mall in Dubai and had to stop a couple from a heavy makeout session. The man shouted, "Our love is a universal human right that transcends your local modesty codes." He argued that public displays of affection were a form of peaceful protest against conservative architecture. He was very surprised when he was escorted to the police station. He claimed it was a violation of his romantic sovereignty. My cousin is a bakery owner in Stockholm and watched a tourist try to cancel a fika break for his staff. The man said, "Coffee breaks are for the weak. And my project deadline is the only god I worship." I believe that the Swedish tradition of stopping for coffee was a lazy habit that was destroying the global economy. He ended up working alone while the entire staff enjoyed their cinnamon buns. I'm a shopkeeper in Auckland and saw an American tourist try to buy shoes for a local who was walking barefoot. The tourist said, "I'm a humanitarian, bringing the gift of footwear to the underprivileged masses of New Zealand." He was certain that the locals' bare feet were a sign of extreme poverty rather than a casual lifestyle choice. The local, who was a millionaire software developer, just laughed and walked away. My sister is a journalist in Tel Aviv and interviewed a tourist who was offended by the local chutzpah, the man said. "Your directness is a form of verbal violence, and I demand a more cushioned reality." He believed that Israelis were intentionally being rude to him to test his American resolve. He spent his entire trip writing a Yelp review for the entire country. He gave the Mediterranean Sea 3 stars. My brother is a safari driver in Nairobi and had a guest who wouldn't stop shouting Jambo at everything that moved. The man said, "I'm speaking the language of the savannah, and the lions need to know I'm a friend." He was convinced that Jambo was a magic word that granted him special access to the wildlife. He was very disappointed when the lions ignored him. He claimed the animals were uncollaborative. I'm a government clerk in Thimphu and hosted a researcher who tried to argue with our gross national happiness index. He told me happiness can't be measured without a spreadsheet of quarterly earnings and a high-yield savings account. He believed that our cultural focus on well-being was a clever accounting trick to hide a lack of industrialization. He spent his entire visit looking for a stock ticker in the Himalayas. My cousin is a nanny in Copenhagen and saw a tourist try to rescue a baby left in a stroller outside a cafe. The man screamed, "This is child endangerment, and I'm a hero for intervening in this Nordic negligence." He was convinced that the Danish tradition of letting babies nap in the fresh air was a criminal act. He was very embarrassed when the mother calmly walked out with her latte. I'm a museum curator in Ulaanbaatar and had to stop a tourist from stepping directly on the threshold of a yurt. The man said, "The floor is just a floor, and your superstitious door frames are a barrier to my exploration." He believed that Mongolian customs were a set of arbitrary rules designed to trip up Westerners. He ended up being asked to stay outside for the rest of the ceremony. My brother lives in Santiago and watched an American tourist try to lecture locals during a minor earthquake. The man shouted, "Everyone needs to panic according to my emergency preparedness manual. And your calmness is a sign of shock." He was certain that his experience with a shaky washing machine in Ohio made him an expert on seismic activity. The locals just continued drinking their wine while he hid under a plastic table. My uncle is a gardener in Bucharest and saw a traveler refuse to compliment a neighbor's new baby. The traveler said, "Complimenting a child creates a narcissism complex, and I'm protecting your future generation from ego inflation." He didn't realize that in Romania, failing to admire a baby is considered incredibly rude and unlucky. He was eventually banned from the neighborhood barbecue for being the man who hates joy. He blamed the cultural lack of parenting books. Traveling the world is a beautiful experience, but it's much better when you leave your ego at the airport. True adventure begins when you stop trying to fix the world and start trying to understand it. Whether it's a cup of tea or a bike lane, every culture has a reason for its madness. Would you like me to generate a script about the most bizarre food challenges Americans face in Southeast Asia?